Happy summer, everyone. Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. On today's episode of the Mayor's Table, we're going to be talking about economic development here in the Four Corners. But we're going to take a little bit of time to make sure that we introduce our new CEO of Four Corners Economic Development, Tim Gibbs. He comes to us from Kentucky. Lots of experience, lots of great ideas. We're excited to have him on the team here. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to the Mayor's Table, Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. And here with me today is our new friend here in the community, the new CEO of Four Corners Economic Development, Tim Gibbs. Welcome to the Mayor's Table.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I thought it was, we're 3 months in, I think, right about now. So it was a good time to bring you in, get some initial observations of the community, the job that's being asked of you by all the stakeholders in Foresaid, and just kind of get some first takes on where you see opportunities for us.
And I would like to park that new thing.
Yeah?
I think 3 months is long enough.
You think so?
I think it's long. Surely someone's more new than I am, okay? But no, I think it's a great time to come in and talk because I think there is a power to having a new set of eyes.
Absolutely.
And coming into a community and seeing the opportunities and seeing the challenges as well. But at the same time, you got to have enough time to listen too. So I think this is a nice sweet spot.
Well, I know you've been around here doing the rounds, doing talks, introducing yourself. We've had you on the radio show, which was great. And we're going to get into some of those things, but I think it's important that people know, who are you? Who is Tim Gibbs? Where are you from? What do you stand for?
Wow. That's a lot right there. And how much time do we have? First off, I've been active in economic development since I was 18 years old. Since really, and way back then when dirt was new, by the way.
Yeah.
Economic development was a little different than it is now. It was one of those things that a municipality or a county may have you doing, but you had 5 other jobs. You were the FEMA applicant agent. You were the solid waste coordinator. Whatever it may be. It wasn't such a big deal. Now it's an incredibly big deal, and it's grown up around how can we help people have the best life that they can and help our business community thrive and to make it a little bigger as well. So I'm a kid originally from Appalachia, from back east, and it was really powerful message there as well because we had brain drain. We saw the best and the brightest have to pack up and leave because there was an opportunity for them to stay at home. They couldn't raise their kids in the same community that they were raised in, and that I wanted to do something about that. I knew that I was going to be a government wonk. I knew the power of people working together collectively was important, but I wanted to find a way to try to make things better. That's what drove me towards economic development. My education is what you would think. I got a bachelor's in political science, got a master's in public administration, community development, and I'm trying, if ever I can ever get done, and I will, to get my doctorate in leadership and educational leadership with a focus on career and technical education for people and how it can move them forward in their lives. But throughout all of it, it's been working with communities, trying to find partnerships, listening to the needs of businesses, and giving the community the best possible chance to succeed from within and what they have, to retain what we have, to grow what we have, but to also share to the world of the opportunity that the community represents. And that's a tall order. But that's what economic development kind of is today, and that's been my calling, to try to help make things better for the communities and the businesses that create jobs. One of the things, and I think I said this when we did the radio interview, economic development do not create jobs. Private businesses create jobs.
Right.
Now, where they do it here or someplace else, we may have some impact on that. So we've got to hold on to what we have, grow the local community, work in collaboration and partners with everyone, and give businesses here the best chance they can to be successful, and share to the world the opportunity we represent for ideally some new ones that would be a good fit here as well. So I've been doing this for 25 years, and it's been my calling. I still feel in many, many ways like I did when I was 18. I'm striving to get better and understand and to make 1 and 1 equal 3 and put together the perfect situation where we can grow and compete. But it's a tough gig. And what I've been doing for the last 3 months here is listening with 2 ears and speaking with 1 mouth, because there's so much context and history here that we have to understand before we can take the right steps moving forward. So I've worked back east, and I've worked in the west as well. I spent time in northwest Colorado. I was in Craig, Colorado. I was in Rangeley, Colorado. I was on the west coast of Washington State. And this is over 25 years. I've worked across the nation, but in each community, we've done good things to help the community grow and be prosperous. So that's kind of who I am. I'm married. My better 3/4, don't say 2/3. She doesn't like that. She knows the difference between the two. Works here in town at one of the banks. We don't have any children, but we're famous for when we come into a community, trying to learn every single thing we can, rolling up our sleeves, being active in that community, and making it ours. And we're trying to do that here in Farmington and San Juan County as well. Some hobbies. I love the outdoors. I love to ski. I would love to. We went out to the petrified. I'm going to mispronounce it. Bisti.
The Bisti.
Bisti. Yeah. We went out and found the petrified forest within that, and was hiking around a couple weekends ago. Can't wait until exploring everything we possibly can. So I'm an outdoorsman. But we have a passion for helping our communities, and it's something I've done in my entire life, and hopefully I'm getting better every day at it.
No, that's great. I mean, you bring an expansive background, experience, and knowledge, and I think in the interviews when we were looking at potential CEOs for Four Corners Economic Development, one of the things that stood out to me is you had this winner's attitude. And look, we're in this game, and we're competing against a lot of communities who are going to be competing for the same jobs, the same industries. How do we make ourselves different? And we need to be utilizing all the resources possible, not just local resources, but state resources and federal resources, because we need to win. And I love that, because we need that attitude at every level in every industry, throughout this state, because I believe New Mexico has a huge potential right now to win. There's some impediments, but everywhere you go, there's impediments. So you try and maximize those things that you're really good at to overcome those impediments, and then improve those impediments as you go. But those were some of the things that really impressed me in our interview with you, and I'm glad that you got the job.
Well, I'm glad I got the job as well. And I will say, so many times, projects, usually companies don't go out looking for a location. They many times will hire a site consultant that represent them. And the site consultant will develop kind of a matrix of the things that's important for where their location could possibly be. Do you have to be near an interstate? Do you need to be near cheap energy? Whatever that matrix is for them to be successful. When we get the opportunity to get in front of those site consultants, which are really driving projects, most of the time it's not that I have to convince them that Farmington is the place to be. Most of the time they've never even thought about the community. Most of the time, they've flown over us, they've driven around us, or maybe they passed through on the way to Durango, whatever it may be, but they've not thought of us. We have to define the opportunity of what we have. We have to be 100% ready for it, and have the opportunity to make the case for it. And when we do that, we're going to be competitive. But so like you said, we've got to be in the game, and we've got to do the work ahead of time to be 100% ready. And when we do those things, we can win. And it's not all about just chasing smokestacks, because I think I mentioned before, we want to take care of what's here first and foremost. And so many times your growth is from within, but we also have to have the other part of the equation, and that is that we can define who we are, and we can get our message out to the world.
Sure. Well, the mission of ForSed is building economically vibrant businesses and communities in the Four Corners region through effective partnerships. And I will say, as you'd mentioned earlier, economic development is a very difficult occupation to be in, because there's so many variables. But it's an interesting time now when there is so much available monies being given at the federal level, down to the state levels, and then to the local levels, that I am, at least over the last 4 years, have seen more money invested into this community through grant funding than probably any time ever, period. And you can look at projects that are going on now, the Pinion Hills Bridge Extension Project, that's a $40 million project, where we just broke ground for a joint partnership program between the San Juan County and the city to expand water and wastewater services to a population here, a community here in the county. That's a $9 million project. We've done projects for water and wastewater here as a city. There's just so much money available, and every community is getting their own. But having individuals who know what to do, how to get it, and how to fill out those grants and tell those stories is really key. And I think you definitely got an edge on that.
This is such a unique. You're right, spot on. This is a very unique time, and I'm not saying that all this money is even funded or paid for. It may be debt. I don't know. But what I do know is there's probably not been a period in the history of the United States where there's been more money put out to communities to set the stage for the decades to come than right now.
And I want to be clear about this, because this is not any political statement whatsoever. It is just fact. This is the reality we're living in. Whether you agree or disagree with federal policy when it comes to the monetary policy has nothing to do. The fact is, this is what they're telling us is available, and this is how they're telling us to go and get it. And we're fools if we're not trying to go and get it, because bringing that money back to this community is crucial, just like every other community in the United States is looking at it through that same lens.
When you raise Lake Farmington, when you double the capacity of the water capacity of this valley here, when you do those things, you're setting the stage for growth and the opportunity for growth for the next 40 to 50 years. These are decisions made today that have long-term ramifications, especially when you're talking about infrastructure. But the same thing can be, and I think we're going to get into that when we talk about sites as well, being ready to compete. So it is certainly a time to do that. And even one of the grants we applied for maybe about a month ago was Department of Energy grant. And the premise of the grant was to look at all the assets we have in this region and how can we assemble those in a way that we have competitive advantages for manufacturing here. We know that we have extraordinary assets in natural gas. We know that we have CO2 and even pipelines with CO2. We know that we have helium that's been in production for a long, long time here. We know there's been quite a bit of effort in hydrogen, and even PESCO is building these fracking that's a bad word, but they're building these hydrogen components that can take natural gas and produce hydrogen.
Right.
We have all these parts and pieces, but how can we assemble these parts and pieces where we have competitive advantages in making things?
Sure.
So
that all the components that go into making that thing could be made right here.
Boom. Yeah. And there's economic sense in doing it here rather than Albuquerque or wherever it may be, Phoenix or whatever, or Dallas or whatever it may be. So we applied for a $150,000 grant, Department of Energy, to look at that. Well, when we got into it, we found out that there had been some preliminary high level research done by Los Alamos National Labs on specifically that, but it didn't go the step of application for economic development. So we aligned ourselves with Los Alamos. They sent a letter of support for our grant and want to partner with us on doing that. Well, that's a federal grant that could have ramifications for the next decade to come, but it's a visionary grant. So many times when you're talking about grants, it is things like water, wastewater, just a road, whatever it may be. Other times it is a little bit broader, where are we going to be, how are we going to get there, and how can we help steer the ship to get that?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on in this community right now. We're not trying to miss the opportunities, but at the same time, we have to do tangible things that's not just what could be 10 years from now. In my 3 months that I've been here, thankfully to some really good support from the board and also from Scott Bird in our office, we've been 45 different businesses, sat down with them. And we go in and we do have some questions for them, but more than anything, we want to listen to them.
Right.
We want to hear their voices. And when you do that, you can compile information that gives our elected officials, that gives folks in decision-making positions the tools to be successful, so to speak. And that's one thing that we do very, very well, and it's an ongoing thing. You're never done. You're always constantly doing that, out listening and making certain that they have all the assets that they need to be successful. In very general terms, and there was some real themes that developed out of these conversations, people are pretty optimistic. More so than you may think if you just was listening to the news,
right.
Whatever news you may pick. People in this community were fairly optimistic about where they thought they were with their business in this community. Now, they certainly had issues. They had things. There was themes that came out of these reports, but the community and the region really had a positive outlook, more so than not. And that's you said economic development is incredibly hard, and it is. But right now, it is an expansion period. There's growth going on. There is opportunity. When that's not happening in the country, when that's not happening in the state, when that's not happening in the region, it gets even more difficult to try to foster and try to develop opportunities.
I agree. There's some basic components of life that help drive success, and the very first of those things is attitude and effort. You got to have a positive attitude, regardless of the situations that you're facing, and you got to be putting forth the effort. Maximum effort would be a great term, but not all the time can you put forth maximum effort. And I think the attitude and the effort right now in this community is in a good position. Could it be better? Of course it could, depending on which side of the city you're living on or whatever industry you're in. You know what? It just depends. But I think generally speaking, there is an optimism out there. We just got done with a listening session here recently as well with some local stakeholders and gathering data and information on where they think we're at. And one of the things that came out of one person made the comment that I think the best years are still to come for our area. There's going to be opportunities that some of us can't even imagine right now that are going to take shape here, that are going to have a great positive impact on the future and the sustainability of this local economy. I love that. The next step to me is people taking pride in the place that they live. We get into these listening sessions and people are talking about economic development. What do my businesses need? And one of the things that comes out of there is the need for beautification and cleanliness and people to feel prideful where they live so that they'll take care of the place that they live better. That's something I think we could be way better on, generally speaking, whether you own a property, you're a landlord of a property, you don't throw your trash out of your car when you're driving down the street, you pick up after yourself and those around you. I think those are huge in affecting how people view the place that they live, the perception of the quality of the place that they live. Those are key components. And then you get beyond that into bringing those resources together as a business owner. It's people, it's products, it's service, it's all those things. But Tim, I want to, for Foreset as an organization that is funded by its stakeholders, is funded by local government, I understand how businesses can measure success, right? They can look at the bottom line. They can make those adjustments in there. How do I maximize profits? How do I maximize pay to my employees? How do I minimize these expenses? How do we measure success as an economic development organization? And I say this because I get a lot of questions for folks from individuals. If I say, hey, you should join Foreset.
Yeah.
Why? What has Foreset ever done? And I look back 2 CEOs ago, Ray Hagerman. One of the things Ray said was, look, I want to grow 500 jobs a year. That's my goal. So I'm going at it from that direction. Growth of jobs will be our measure of success as an organization. I want your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a difficult proposition. It is. And it's always nice if you can quantify something and say, I want to grow. First and foremost, you want to keep what you have too. So retention is incredibly important as well. And that's a little harder to measure when you've actually helped someone stay in business,
sure,
or not cut employees, or even potentially grow their business as well. And to get them in touch with the pieces and parts to help them be successful. Now, historically, I've been a recruiter. I mean, my biggest success has been in recruitment and bringing things to a community. That's probably my forte that I've been at. But to do that, you've got to have the assets in place that you can compete with. And right now, we're working to make certain that our portfolio is robust enough that we have things to use to recruit. So over the next year or two or three, we're probably identifying parcels and buildings. We're probably working towards building some sites, working towards getting certification of those sites and making sure they're shovel ready. We're working towards making sure we have components that we could offer and compete with for projects. So it's hard for me to say 500 jobs. It's really, really hard for me to do that right now. On top of that, we've lost a lot of family wage jobs in this community, with the one power plant and the mine that's left. And there's another one that's got a closing date that's out there. And there's work to be done on that as well. So that's huge retention. And I think anyone would say that if there's an opportunity to keep 960 family wage jobs at somewhere close to $100,000 a year in this region, that has significant value, and you have a really, really hard time recruiting anything to come and take the place of that. So what success looks for an economic development organization really depends on the day and the time that you're applying the lens, and that's really hard. It's really hard for you. So it's hard to stand up before a council and explain the retention and the efforts and the getting ready to compete, and building the rapport of the organization with the partners that it takes to have the opportunity to see the projects that we didn't get invited in the past to even participate in. Those things are really, really hard. So I'm not asking for a honeymoon because I don't think anyone deserves that. But I do think for Forsed that there's tangible things that you can say that you're doing to compete, to retention of what you have, for vision of what we could be and how we could get there, to bring the assets to the table and the money to the table to fund those type of activities, and to position us for we can make a bigger piece of pie that can be divided however it is by the business community.
And I think one of the things you guys do well at, that's education. You do provide a lot of education for the community. If you subscribe to the newsletter, there's a lot of great information that's being shared out there through Forsed that kind of keeps people apprised on things that are happening here locally, events that are taking place that deal directly with economic development. Broadband Future is one of those, June 25th. Understanding the level of effort and progress in broadband in our area. There's a lot of those opportunities as well that I think are unique to economic development organizations, and they do have an important role for communities that are wanting to expand or wanting to retain. I'm glad you brought up retention, because the retention component to me, early on, maybe in my elected time, there wasn't a lot of talk of retention, and a lot of it went to the Chamber of Commerce, kind of their part that they do, and promoting and supporting local business. But there is a component, and I know through Nancy Shepard, we've done a really expansive kind of study on what business retention looks like for local companies. And by the way, for all those companies who have been a part of those surveys, thank you so much. It's really invaluable information, and it helps set policy and projection on where we're going and how we can best serve those companies.
No, in no way was I trying to avoid that question, because you have to define.
It's a tough question.
It is, and it's
because if you set it at 500 jobs a year, I mean, man, especially when you're losing jobs, and when you're and what part did Forsed play in creating jobs? If I can go out and I can attract a Pepsi manufacturing company, and they're going to come and they're going to we're going to make Pepsi here. I don't know why I said Pepsi, but it could have been any soda pop. If Forsed was the agency that was made the initial attempts to contact, they laid out the foundation for the company to come here, they sold them on the property, they sold them on the community. I mean, that's all that could be subscribed to that economic development group. We've not had that per se, but I think that was Ray's kind of thought, is that there was going to be success in doing those kind of things.
Well,
and I hope that's what you're obviously working on also. But to put a 500 person a year new job, that's a tough one.
Ray's a Kentuckian. We've crossed paths before.
He's a good man. I like Ray.
I was president of the Kentucky Association for Economic Development back when. So I know we've crossed paths in the past. It starts with retention. You try to give opportunity for expansion as well, and you do strategic recruitment. But to do so, you have to be ready.
Yeah.
In many ways, we haven't spent a lot of effort in the past in being ready and having assets that we could use for that component.
One of the things that you've touched on in the 3 months you've been here is the need for industry space, so industrial parks.
Yeah.
And that is something I've taken very seriously, and we've began our we've upped our kind of efforts in reaching out to some landowners in some strategic areas where we would like to see some industrial parks created. Because I agree with you. I think it's a really important component to be ready, site ready, turnkey. Get these organizations, these manufacturers, these companies who can come in. And right now there's a lot of opportunity out there in a lot of fields that are looking for that space. We talked earlier, 50,000 square foot space, 24 foot, 30 foot, 50 foot ceilings. I don't know.
As much as you can get. Because
Right.
people want to go up rather than out.
Sure.
Because you're paying square footage. There's so many reasons that we have to be ready. And if this isn't anything about our existing building stock, but how many buildings are efficient, have LED lighting, got the HVAC systems are as efficient as they can be, the logistics of in and out and parking and everything else is optimized, because those are the things it takes to win projects.
Sure.
That's what it takes.
Let me ask you this. You got the sites, you got the buildings. What about the workforce? And that's got to be a big part of, obviously, you're gathering the resources, you're presenting this information. When we talk about our local workforce, we got to have people ready to work.
We do, and we've got initiatives going on that as well. We've got some programs where we're actually working with companies to evaluate, not just evaluate their workforce, but make sure the communication between management and workforce is taking place. Because what we're finding is we may have the world in our hands, but it's even getting harder to communicate as people,
Right.
even at our work spot. So we're doing programs right now with businesses to improve the communication that will lead to better retention, because the workers will understand the management understand the workers better and the priorities of each and how they can align. We're doing that right now as an organization because workforce is an incredibly important thing. And it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
In fact, I would argue that here versus other places that I've worked, this is a blue-collar community. Doesn't mean that I don't mean anything derogatory. I mean that in the best way possible. When I'm talking to a business, I can talk to them that in many, many ways, they're more likely to build, if they can have a relationship with their employees, they can pay a family wage, they're going to get a workforce. And that's not always the case in other places. So we have opportunities to use that as a positive while we're still trying to be better in this changing world post-COVID that got turned topsy-turvy. So there's always opportunities. We're located on San Juan College at the Enterprise Center. I've got right next to me small business development. We've got the Makerspace. We've got 7 different organizations that in some way that's supposed to help entrepreneurs and help businesses grow. We're intertwined in a way to provide services with the chamber as well to help businesses, to help do them. If they start off with one of the other 6, I don't care. I just want them to have the pieces and the parts to help make them successful if there's any way possible for that, and we have to align ourselves to do that. So certainly workforce is a challenge. It's a changing thing. There's so many dynamics about workforce as well. Community colleges, their value is going up, while 4-year institutions are even struggling a little bit.
Right.
Just because of the cost of the education. And I'm a huge education fan and proponent. But if you come out of school and you have $125,000 of debt, that's a tough gig too. So, and
you're in a career field that doesn't necessarily going to pay you what it takes to pay that off in a short period of time. I mean, right. What are you going to school for? I think, and I have a son who's in high school, and so we're talking about what are the realities of choosing a 4-year institution and what your major is going to be, and how is that going to look if you come out of there with just that bachelor's and this degree or that degree, and how quickly do you think you're going to be making money, as opposed to what we know we offer here as a community college. We're trying to focus on those jobs that are needed here in the community. And we certainly know, whether it's healthcare component, we've got our nursing program at San Juan College. We've got our dental hygienist program there, but then we also have our trades program. We have our welders program. These are jobs that are going to be needed forever. And AI, we talked a lot about AI this last week on our radio show. Wow. The jobs that AI are going to replace and jobs that AI can't replace. And those human-to-human interaction jobs are some that AI can't replace. They can enhance and they will make better. But when it comes to physically having the capabilities of replacing a pipe, of fixing an electric socket, of fixing a vehicle, all those things come, or being a teacher, being a nurse, those kind of things. And those are things that I know that they're focused on.
Well, I know you know this, but I think this is noteworthy to share with the audience. One of the very first meetings that I had was San Juan Regional Medical Center. And so I'm sitting down the leadership of the hospital, and we're talking, and they shared with something that's still ringing in my ears. They have 180 openings right now. The average salary for the 180 is $100,000. Mayor, if I came to you today with a press release that said Four Corners Economic Development had recruited a company with 180 jobs at $100,000 a year, I think we would be 5 o'clock lead story on several TV stations in Albuquerque.
Sure.
But yet that is here. So once again, this alignment of opportunity and of careers to people is incredibly important, and at times painful to do, because they need a lot of these people right now, not 2 years down the road. They may need them 2 years, but they need them now.
Right.
So there are opportunities here, even in this changing economy, and all of us have a significant role in making that connection for that to happen. So how do we get into the high schools? Do we get into middle schools? How do we start on those alignment pieces? I've met with the superintendent. Are working very, very closely with the college as well. And we're also that middle ground between business and industry, and also the providers and the educational providers and the training partners and such that help fill what they need to be successful. That's an incredibly important component of what we do and what all of us collectively have to do together.
I think that's a great data set too, is having an annual assessment of needed jobs, of needed workers, and in which industries in our community. I think that would be a great, it's a great conversational piece, but it also gives us poignant conversations with our young people. You mentioned brain drain, and I think it's interesting you coming from Appalachia, obviously in an area economically speaking, through any energy transition, that has taken shape. Appalachia, of course, has been hit extremely hard in that regard. And here in New Mexico, we're not far off, because energy is our key component. But if you're outside of the energy scape, or you don't work for government, you're going somewhere else for your job. And we want to change that. We need to shift that. We need to make this a state that has multiple industries that are very robust and have that resource capability nearby where you can actually see them come. You can take care of that. Simi Valley, you got the tech industry. All of them exist there because they've built that economy around themselves to make it more efficient and less expensive to do business. I don't know where I'm going with that, but
and for me, we've had such a unique opportunity here. I have been working with New Mexico Partnership, which is the recruitment arm for the state of New Mexico Economic Development. We have been working with the Cabinet for Economic Development here in New Mexico and sharing with them both things that we're doing here and things that I had done in the past that had made significant differences for areas around the state. So I do think a new set of eyes every once in a while is a good thing to be brought to the table. Tomorrow, I go in front of a grant committee to defend a grant that we're looking to see what we could do to get some funding to the design engineering for a spec building here. So we're doing the parts and the pieces to try to prepare ourselves, take advantage of this unique opportunity of time, and to make it we can compete for today and for the next 10 years in this community.
So historically speaking, our Chamber of Commerce here has been non-political, which is perfectly fine. And I don't think this is necessarily a politically driven question, but to the degree that ForSed can be involved in advocating for reforms that support small business or support public safety, for example. We know that one of the biggest concerns business owners have, and really anybody looking to move to any community or stay in a community, has a lot to do with how comfortable they feel in that community, how safe they feel. There are some definite issues that we need to get worked out in Santa Fe that I believe would help all of our communities tremendously. Is that something that you see ForSed getting involved in?
Well, in the last two gigs I had before coming here, it was a joint Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development, both together. Now, we're right down the hall from Chamber of Commerce. I had a sit-down conversation with the executive director today, and that happens multiple times during the week. So we're aligned extremely closely with our chamber. The answer is yes, but we also have to be careful too.
Because you have a membership still.
Well, and economic development's a little different than chambers. If you bite the hand that feeds you, maybe it's not as likely to feed you. I mean, I know that's a simplistic comment, but so you got to be careful, but you also have to be able to stand for something as well. So when the voice of business and industry speaks, and one of the things in that BRE report that we had was a lot of folks thought that Mexico was a hard state to operate in. Now, I don't think, Mayor, they were talking about the city of Farmington. In fact, we know that because they said that multiple times. But tort reform, unemployment insurance, it goes on. And even just the dichotomy that exists between points of view between the capital, Albuquerque, and both the southwest, the southeast, and the northwest. There's difference of opinion on multiple things that makes it sometimes difficult.
Sure.
So certainly we can have a role. One of the things that we've done is we've kind of reached out to all of our elected officials, and it's a funny time because we're getting ready to go through a primary here. It's a funny time, but we know that during the summertime in Santa Fe, a lot of the committees do the work that lead to legislation being passed during the session. In the last couple years, legislators has told ForSed, you've waited too late. You reached out to us in September. The plate was kind of set for the legislative session, and you didn't participate when you could have had a voice in the hearings. When economic development, when a region, when an organization can stand up and go, whoa, wait a minute. That's not how everyone feels. And there is an alternative to this, and we'd like for at least you to consider these facts as well.
Sure.
So we've reached out early as we can to make certain that we're both aware of what's going on at our Capitol, that our organization has the opportunity to have a voice, and that we're speaking for business and industry, for the region, and for our membership, and for our members. So we can be better.
Right.
And we didn't know that until our legislators said, you waited too late to have a voice within at least the committee structure that forms the legislation. By the time you're in, you're playing defense.
I'm excited for where we're going to go with ForSed. And people have asked me, being a member, what do I get from being a member? Why should I become a member of ForSed? I've always taken the path to say, look, if you look at the people who are in ForSed, if I go to a meeting of the members, it is so many of this community's long-term stakeholders, individuals have true investment in this community, not just because they have a business, but because this is where they raise their kids, this is where they coach Little League, this is where, this is home, and this is where they want to continue to see prosperity happen. They want their grandkids to come back or to live here. They want that quality of life that they hold so dear to be sustainable over a long-term period of time. When I sit in that room with folks, those are the people that I'm looking at. So if you're talking to people as an opportunity to become a member, what else do you tell them about the benefits?
And there's two sides to this equation, and thank you for asking, because this is important.
Yeah.
And this is a nugget from it. First and foremost, if you're representing a business, how can we help you? How can we help you from where you are today and where you're going tomorrow? And so many times, there's 100 things that we may have in our pocket or in our backpack that we may be able to apply to you. Whether it's you're growing and there's an incentive program to adding workers, or that we can help you with the training costs, or we can help you with the wages of adding new employees while they're going through their training. Because there is programs out there, state programs, actually federal dollars, that will offset up to 6 months, up to 3/4 of a new employee's wage during a training period. There's also things that we can bring to the table with San Juan College, of whether it's a one-day training, or whether it's help hiring people, or whether it's help on a specific piece of new machinery that you're bringing in that we can help leverage. And there's probably 75 to 100 different things like that, that if you don't know the alphabet soup of state and federal government, that you have no idea that could help your company. So first and foremost, we will profile your company and bring tangible benefits to your company and help you be successful for retention and expansion. The second side of that coin is we are working towards making a bigger piece of pie that can be divided up however it may be that will benefit your business. So we are a facilitator of economic growth for the region. We can help on recruitment and doing those type things that will help, whether Ray Hagerman's right on 500 or 5, retain what we have, grow what we have, and be strategic about what we can bring. But on the flip side of it, profile who they are, what they do, what they need, and how we can help them and connect the dots, whether it be workforce, training, public partnerships, the state, the federal, or even many, many times, this is something people don't think about. A lot of times when we talk to businesses, they say, we make X and we use this and this and this in the process. And we will say, do you know there's another company that makes that component here locally? Have you ever had a conversation with them? Did you even know that you may be able to shorten your supply chain? You may be able to have a competitive advantage is by using that component. We had a recruitment project in about a week and a half ago that was looking at a small-scale manufacturer here. One of the things that they talked about, and I can't go too far here, was one component they use in their process that they're getting from someplace, I think it was California. There was someone here that did very, very similar. We're connecting them to that. So they could.
That's great.
So there's so many things, but it's two sides of the coin. How can we help you, and then how can we make a stronger, bigger economy for all?
Yeah. I think being at the table there, and especially in industries that may be underserved and don't have particularly a voice, maybe in some other kind of business conglomerates or advocacy groups, that it's great to have that diversity there within the membership, so that we get to hear from everybody. We get to understand the challenges they're facing. We get to hear the wins that they're having and how we can capitalize on those things.
Yeah, and there's so much information as well. When we do newsletters, a couple times a month, when we do those, we want there to be a nugget in every one. We want you to know something that you otherwise would have never heard of before that. When we do quarterly breakfast, we brought in the gas and oil industry, and they specifically were talking about where we are today and where they think we're going. One of the questions that you had in here was about what's next. Well, if we can facilitate those conversations and give the best information possible for you to make decisions for your business, there's value of that too. And our membership starts off really low. I mean, we have about 104 members, about evenly split on between public and private. Now, on income that we bring in, we have a lot more public or private members than public.
Sure.
But about for the income we come in is about half and half right now. So we're always going to provide the best and most timely information possible. We're going to provide services for the individual businesses that ideally at the end of the year they can say, I got X, Y, and Z. And we're going to position the community to have the opportunity to compete and ideally grow as well, going back to what Ray was talking about.
Sure. Well, Tim, I don't have any other questions per se. Anything you want to end on? Anything you want to make sure people understand? Or that's a broad question too, but
yeah, I love it. I love your last question was the current economic outlook. That's incredibly difficult. We have a national election that's going to take place in how many months? 7? 7 months.
5 months.
5 months. November, you're right.
It's already 5 months.
But so what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And no politics. We dance
No.
whoever brings us the ball. And in many, many ways, we're the tip of the tail that's being waved on that. As far as federal policy, that's going to impact state policy, that's going to impact the municipal, the cities and the county.
Sure.
There's so many things. But what I can tell you today is there is opportunity today. And we're trying to make hay for today, but we're trying to store some of it and put some of it up for the winter that's going to come as well. So we have a vision, and I'll end with this. There's at least 2,000 other organizations across the United States trying to do exactly what we're trying to do. And if any day that we're not competing against those 2,000 and doing better than they are, we're going backwards.
Right.
But I can tell you, I think in the last 90 to 100 days that our partners see the effort, both on state and local. Our alignment with the city of Farmington, our alignment with your professionals that are very good at what they do, our alignment with the county, the understanding of our smaller municipalities and the limitations they have a hard time applying for these grants. They have a hard time having people to manage these grants, yet they understand the unique opportunities. This is the time that we have to make 1 and 1 equal 3, that collectively we can do things that will set the stage, just like you raising that lake, that's going to pay the benefits for the next 50 years.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I'm glad you're here and excited about your outlook. And I'm excited that one of the things you said early on was that you came to Farmington and you educated yourself. And you're educating yourself now, understanding what it is to be here in San Juan County, what it is to be a New Mexican, what are the values and things that we hold dear, and how you can fit into that. And I tell this to people a lot, especially interviewing folks for boards and commissions. Anytime you come into a new situation, I always recommend you seek to understand instead of being understood. It is so critical. I mean, everybody's got not everybody has, but the agendas get thrown out there so early on, and it drives people's opinions and attitudes on things. If you come in and just seek to understand, you can learn so much more and find your place. And I appreciate the fact that that's what you're trying to do so you can maximize your talents on this community's behalf. So welcome to Farmington.
Thank you.
Welcome to San Juan County.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, hey, thank you all for being a part of this great community, and it is a great time. And I hope you're feeling the optimism. There's a lot of really good projects that are going on all across our community. So have that sense of optimism. Keep that positive attitude. Let's put forth the effort. Let's take pride in the place that we live. If you're looking for more information on Four Corners Economic Development, they have a fantastic website. Tim?
We do. Great website. By the way, it's not a static site either. We're constantly putting more content up there. So there's a library of information about who we have been and what we're doing, but also what comes next.
Yeah. Social media sites as well. But yes, easy to get a hold of them, easy to learn what's happening. Get involved. We talk about this on every episode. Get involved. Find your place in this community. Forset, as a business owner, this would be a great place for you to lend your voice, lend your ears, lend your talents, lend your perspective, enhance what we're trying to do here locally to continue to make this community the best community that it can be. So thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you here next time on the Mayor's Table.